G'day tribe. I just want to tell you a bit about Australia having a bad time. And it's not about the coronavirus. It's about the fact that there used to be a time when the pubs didn't have any beer. Slim Dusty used to sing about it. But it was a bad time also in other parts of the world. In fact, way back in the time of Jesus, they had a problem similar to this. You see, Jesus had just picked his 5 mates and they were enjoying life, but there was a time when his mother said to him, "We're going to a wedding in Cana and you're coming with me." Now, as you know, mothers are a subset of grandmothers and they are never wrong. I told you that before. So he and his mates did what they were told and they went to this marriage in Cana. Now, a marriage in those days wasn't at all like the ones we have. I mean, if you're lucky, you can get over and done with in the morning and still see the football in the afternoon. In those days, it went for days. They had ceremonies. They had a master of ceremonies to look after everything. And it was during this time at the marriage of Cana that the master of ceremonies turned to the bridegroom, who was supposed to provide all the food and wine, and said to him, "We're running out of wine." And that came out in this book called The Day the Grog Ran Out. Now, the bridegroom was in a terrible state because if you ran out of wine, the whole thing would collapse. The wedding would be a disaster, his name would be mud, and he'd have no prestige in the local village. So he was in a terrible pickle, but Mary was beside him. She was part of that family, and she turned to Jesus and she said to him, "Fix it." Now, Jesus was having a good time with his mates, and he said, No, not now. No, this is not my time. But then she gave him a motherly stare, the sort of thing that would break up bricks. Julie Bishop would be pleased to see that sort of stare. And so he suddenly thought, maybe I'd better do something about it. And you know what he did? He said, "Bring over those vats which they had out there in the front of the assembly where people had been washing, using the water for washing to make sure they were ritually pure for the ceremony." And they brought them over, the servants, and he said, "Pour the water out." And they poured the water out, and then he said, "Pour the water back in." So they poured more water in. And then he said, "Take a piece of that, a glass of that, and take it to the master of ceremonies." Well, they shrugged their shoulders and they took that to the master of ceremonies, and he tasted it and approved of it, and it was served for the rest of that festival of marriage. And he turned to the bridegroom and he said, "This is amazing. Normally, people bring out their best wines to start with, and then later on, you find that there's only a little bit left or it's not as good, and so the wine can be not so much as good as it was in the first place. People don't notice because they've been eating and drinking for a while. But you've brought out the last as the best." Now, that's the first time, A, that we have had a miracle, and B, that Jesus' idea of turning society on its head came about. That's the idea that he brought out in the Sermon on the Mount. Remember all that? Blessed are these, blessed are those, blessed are sons, mainly to show that the bottom row of society could become great and was great. And it was important that they have that. So this is the first time that you people come into the picture. We're only small, but what we do as small people is big. Remember I told you about random acts of kindness? You've got to keep that up. It's our small people like you doing random acts of kindness that keep the world going around. Let's have a prayer then. Dear God, look after us small people, and help us to provide the random acts of kindness that keep the world going. Amen.